Hola, hola a todos. Primero, muchas gracias para la invitación a Oriel y Douglas. Thank you guys. Thanks for taking me here. So you have seen that there is a few difficulties with my first name, right? This is about identity. When I'm in Belgium or in France, I'm Guillaume. Yeah. Don't try to remember that, right? When I'm in the US, I'm G. Yeah, try to get American at Starbucks to spell your name. You never get a coffee, trust me. You never get a coffee. Here, it's gonna be Memo or Guillermo. Feel free to choose. So today, I'm sorry that I'm gonna do this presentation in English. But that's the only way I can really go through all these slides. What we're going to do today is, that's the only Spanish I'll try to get you. Una mirada al futuro de la identidad digital en la lucha contra el fraude. A big program, right? So, where do we start? If I can start. Okay. We got it. Okay. 2022. That is being kind of a ride, guys. With the pandemic, we have seen an acceleration of digital onboarding, of all of us going digital overnight, right? So for 2 years, we have been trying to accommodate and to get back in the real life, but the digital life is still there. The last 2 years, adoption on digital product has been increasingly growing. So pandemic has really changed the habits, right? Where's kids? Where's the children here? Am I the only one? This guy there? No one else? Come on. Children here? Where's children? There? Okay. So for example, if you take children, the ways they had to learn, they had to start looking at tablets, they had to start learning with computer. Even at school now, going back, you have computers in all classrooms and so on. So it has been really, the adoption is not only for us, the old guys, it's also the youngest generation. So this is what the pandemic teach us and taught us. A sign of what to come, right? So over the last 2 years, the first even year of the pandemic, we have accelerated the digitalization of the world by 3 to 4 years. So in 12 months, the first 12 months of this pandemic, there was a bump of 3 to 4 years in digitalization of customer interaction. This is massive, right? We have seen also global e-commerce transaction increase by 20% over that period. And then the attacks. A lot of the attacks pre-pandemic were driven a lot by bots. And I think earlier today, in their introduction remarks, both Douglas and Oriel talk about the robots, right, and the robots attacks. So during the pandemic, you had the reversed effect, where you started to have more human attacks than robots attack, which is pretty rare, and that was a reverse of the curves that we have seen over the last 10 years. Meaning that it's so much more complicated to catch fraud coming from a human than from a robot. Trust me, that's much more complicated. So that's also one of the things that happened during the pandemic. Also, thing we have seen during this pandemic, right, and since the last couple of years, what I call the great transhumance, la grande migración. See? I'm looking at these guys there to see if my Spanish is okay, but it seems it's okay. So what we have seen that a lot of offline consumer activities migrating to online. I take a very personal example. I have a 76-year-old mother. During the pandemic, she started to order things online. Really, I was like shocked. She did it. So imagine if an old lady of 75 years or 76 years old in Belgium is ordering online. It's the adoption of all other generation has been really increasingly growing. So it means also for the application for everyone, either you are a bank, either you are a fintech, you are e-commerce, or you serve e-commerce, you serve for payment and so on, a lot of other website and application. It means that there is a lot of changes happening, right? You need to adapt the technology development, the customer experience. Some of our peers talk about the friction. I think friction has been really a pain in the back for a lot of us, right? So friction is something that a lot of application, a lot of people have to focus on. And then digital transformation with tech laggard, right? The government IDs. We've seen more and more government looking at solutions to digitalize identities. So far, to be fairly honest, I haven't seen anything pretty convincing. Still looking for, I think in the coming years, we're going to see a few interesting moves from some nations, but for the moment, it's still kind of lagging. And then the digital and financial inclusion, super important. In a lot of emerging countries, digital and financial inclusion is a challenge. It's the challenge of the 21st century, right? And we need really to do our part there. Tech and financial for all, that's really what it means. In some countries where you only have your phone numbers as the only way to communicate, financial inclusion goes through that mobile phone, and that's very important. Then, again, COVID-19. It's kind of the new normal with the remote work and access from work. So a lot of people working remotely these days. A lot of changes, as you can see. So one of the things we have seen also is that the pandemic allows us to, as a group of professionals into the identity and the fraud management, to fill a few gaps, right? You need to look at, I'll take this side. Education, super important one. I was mentioning earlier with the children's, education is super important. And this is what digital identity and fraud management also allows us, right? You don't want like a 50-year-old person crushing a class, right, from children in Belgium, in Mexico, in the US. So this is why digital identity and fraud management is so important. We have seen a lot of Zoom crash, Teams crash, people coming, inviting themselves in this room during lessons or meetings. So how do we secure education? How do we promote education? That's super important. This is what the lesson we started to learn. Banking, I think most of you here knows about how important it is, right, to deliver better access and filling the gaps, right? And then the healthcare and the legal rights, that's also a very important one. Okay. Okay, what challenges ahead? Let's crack a few cases here in terms of numbers. I don't like to get numbers like that, but I think it demonstrates today that our identity is in the cloud. Our identity mostly is in the dark web, is on the dark web. So we have seen here data breaches have been really bad from a customer confidence, right? I'm not going to give necessarily a lot of names, but over the last few years, you have companies like Starwood, like Yahoo, AOL, all these companies being breached. It means that all our credentials are out there on the dark web. What does it mean concretely? It means concretely that thanks to that, fraudsters can get access to personal data and can use that to leverage your identity on application or to create synthetic identities. So that's really one of the main problems. This is a problem driven mostly by login and password. No more login, no more password, less breaches, definitely. That's for sure. It's not the end or where I want to go, but certainly one, right? About password. I like this one. This is cybercrime cost $3 trillion in 2020. $3 trillion. I mean, this is, if you look at that, this is a country by itself. That will be the 7th largest country in the world. I mean, I wish I can be elected president of the fraudsters. That's a big, big country there, right? So, if you look at identity fraud specifically, just specifically, it's cost to enterprises and consumer 56 billion 2020. Can you imagine that? In terms of GDP, it goes number 86. Not bad. Not bad. It's a country GDP by itself, right? So what does it mean concretely for us, right? The fraud is endemic. It's everywhere. We have 5 billion mobile internet users by 2025. How do we secure them? Or are we ready to help them to get a safe experience online? We have a usage growth of mobile app by 40% year on year, with 35 billion mobile app downloads. 35 billion. It means that you have, in average, 7 to 8 apps that are downloaded and where you need to enter your credential. That's a lot. Personally, if you look at your phone, how many apps do you have? Think about that. And how many different credentials you have also there. Think about it. That's all these credentials are different. All these credentials require you to have a login and a password. That's also a challenge for the future. If you want a smoother experience, less risk, you need to dematerialize that. Service like PayPal in finance, in finance, you've seen 22% growth the first quarter of the pandemic. Not bad. And then that one is what I was mentioning earlier, 80% breaches. This also is accelerated. And then last, we see that COVID is really has been one of the largest security threats ever. And this is still one because we haven't really well adapted. And that's our problem today. So, what's caused that? I think it's us. It's us, the consumer. Not me as Memo, G, Guillaume, but us as a consumer. We want everything to be frictionless, which is normal, right? And the enterprises, either you are a bank, either you are e-commerce, a gaming company, you want a conversion of your users. So you want less friction for your users too, because you know that less friction means they're going to enroll faster and better. So we accept fraud in the industry. Enterprises accept fraud. I remember I had a conversation with a big social network. Big one. These guys, actually, they were telling us that they were ready to accept some fraud at some point, up to 5%. Because it means that it's still, even if it's a fake identities, even if there are fake users there, it's conversion shown to their shareholders. That's what it is these days, right? So how do we get out of this just very fragile equilibrium and balance between friction, user experience, and higher security system? This is our challenge. And I think today, this is why we are gathering here in Mexico, in Monterrey, to actually look at what are the options for today and tomorrow, and how we can really be better at providing services to our consumers. So one of the problems of today, right, and it's common to a lot of companies and enterprise. There is a disparate defense process. Just realize we have a process. It's a process. So this disparate defense process means that first, This is the first part where we have issues, login and password. This going into breaches, absolutely. And after a period of 6 months retention, after the breach, this is where fraudsters usually are using these. So that's our first problem. Then we are using different method of verification, different method of defense. They are not harmonized. And that has been really a problem. You have different flows, different vendors. Can you have one vendor for all your flows? I wish I get that answer to you and I would say, no, you need only one. But yes, you need a few different flows, different vendors for that, different methods of authentication, different method of identity and onboarding. But it's really fragmented. There is no rationale behind that. And so you have your own data side, your behavior data, your name and address, and then you can have your own machine learning engine, or you don't. Depends on how you're advanced into your fraud system, right? So we have seen really a lot of these across different enterprises. What we are looking in the future, and this is about today that it started, is really ubiquity. It's the ubiquity of a single reliable partners for some of your flows, right? You don't want to separate your flows. Again, you can have 5 vendors for 5 different flows, but you need to harmonize each of these flows for your use cases. These use cases are really, really important to be treated as one attack, one problem, one vendor. Ubiquity means that you can get a look at every single identifier you have there, adding multi-factor authentication, looking at identities, for example, looking at behavioral data, looking at the IP, at the phone number, at the email, and all that's going to start to help you to get rid of some of the weakness that we have today into the application. That's the first step before going to the future. I think we all want to go to the future, and quickly. So, can I just, for me, there is one thing. I've been working on mobile identity for a very long time. And there is things that in mobile identity that are really make that as a unique, really unique solution, a unique solution because of the phone number. The phone number is a great identifier. Phone number is 2 things for it. Phone number, there is 2 kinds of data in this world. It's not about good data, bad data. Now, it's about the offline data. Anything about a user, the identity of a user. This offline data, you're going to find it like typically with the credit bureau. It's a name, it's an address. It can be also a date of birth. And this is offline. This is the physical world. This is where we live, here. And then you have the online world. The online world is really where we get information like email, IP address, cookies, all these kind of information that we can find online. And the holy grail into mobile identity, and how we're working on that, would be to combine the offline world information with the online world information. You have then a 360 view of your users. Who they are, what are they doing, and what are the risks to onboard these users. That's the holy grail. I think a lot of us agreed on that. So are we doing that? It's a simple equation to that and a response. Phone number. The phone number lives in both worlds. They live in the offline world and live in the online world. And that makes it one of the perfect identifier to actually get rid of these login and password. And the phone numbers has been really a great vehicle to actually accelerate digitalization in a lot of different markets, in a lot of different verticals, and becoming a much more powerful vehicle also against fraud. So, the future, our dream, right? A passwordless world. That's really what we are all aiming, right? This is really where your users don't have any more credentials. They don't have all their data there into your network. You just provide them a service where everything gets actually dematerialized and they don't share all their PII, only what they need to share. And again, what does it mean for your business? It means that you de-risk your business by actually not having a lot of data out there. Limit the breaches. You enable growth. That's also an important one. Every one of us here are looking at that. Less friction, more conversion as growth, right? And then you reduce your cost. Less network cost, less also being more efficient, having access to a ubiquitous system of authentication and verification and identity and onboarding. This is really exactly what it's about and where the future is going. And here we go. Any question? Even in Spanish, I can try. I can take a stab at it. Let's. Come on, don't be shy. Claro? Muy bien. Thank you for your attention. Muchas gracias.